Hey guys, I'm John Griffith, certified personal trainer and owner of Max Fortitude Fitness. And today we'll be talking about nutrition. Alright guys, so this is our first official webinar. If you have a topic you want to learn more about, just leave a comment below with that. What we'll be covering today is just the basic level of what nutrition is and how you can apply that to help make better food choices in the future. We'll also be going over some of the more popular types of diets that you're seeing, such as the paleo and the ketogenic diet. So jumping into it, first off, what is a diet? This is one of my pet peeves, like when people say they want to go on a diet or they're about to go on a diet, when in reality, you're always on a diet. All a diet simply is what you're eating on a regular basis. Secondly, nutrition. What nutrition is obtaining food for health. And as we'll see, there's some things that can contribute towards good health, at the same time, some things that can detract from that. So, why is nutrition important? It's a pretty obvious thing. What you put into your body affects how you feel, how you perform, and of course, your physical appearance as well. It also helps to promote conscious food choices. So by developing that understanding, you're in a better place to help make an educated decision on what you eat. Also understanding the effects that it has on the body. So there's three components of nutrition we'll be going over today. First, we have our macronutrients, followed by micronutrients, and finally hydration. So looking at macronutrients first, we have three different types. There's our fats, or our lipids, carbohydrates, and proteins. The fat is going to be our most calorie-dense type of macronutrient. 1 gram of fat is equal to 9 calories. A lot of times we see people going on these low-fat diets. I don't really recommend that just because your body needs a certain amount of fat every day to help support bodily functions. Now, that being said, you do need to moderate the amount just because the calorie density of the fat, so you're not ending up with a surplus of calories at the end of the day, eventually leading to excessive weight gain. Now, we can break those fats down into three different types. We have our saturated fats, which you'll normally find in animal meat, and then we have poly and monounsaturated fats. These are more the heart-healthy type that you'll find in things like nuts, avocados, and fish. Moving on to carbohydrates. These are 4 calories for 1 gram, and carbohydrates are the body's preferred source for energy. Just like fats, we can break these down. There's 2 different types of carbohydrate. We have our complex. These are going to be, example, sweet potatoes that are broken down by the body over a longer duration than would be your simple carbohydrates. Example of a simple carbohydrate would be basic sugar, absorbed by the body rapidly. Finally, looking at protein, these are also 4 calories for 1 gram. They're necessary by the body for tissue repair and recovery, and they can be broken down into individual amino acids. So there's 20 different types of amino acids. We have 9 essential ones, and then there's 11 non-essential ones. So the essential ones are ones that aren't produced by the body, meaning you have to get these through your daily diet. And then the 11 non-essential are produced by the body. Looking at macronutrients, these are also required by the body, but in smaller quantities than would be your macronutrients. And these are simply made up of your vitamins and minerals. So your vitamin A, B, C, and then the minerals, examples being calcium, magnesium, and potassium, used by the body for different functions. Again, you don't need as many as you do with your macronutrients. So if you're eating a well, healthy, balanced diet, it's probably not necessary to have any type of vitamin or mineral supplementation. Finally, looking at hydration. We all know drinking water is important. We have the old standard of 8 glasses of 8 ounces of water daily. It may be a little bit higher than that. And of course, this is going to depend and vary by individual to individual, and that's going to depend on your environment, your daily activity level, and your workout routine. So with hydration, keep in mind that sources other than just traditional water do count towards your daily intake. If you're drinking coffee or tea in the morning, that counts to it, as does things like fruits and vegetables. For example, watermelon is about 96% water content. That counts towards it, but it's going to be hard to measure exactly how much water you're getting from those type of sources. But again, they do count towards it. Now avoid things of what we call empty calories. So things like soda provide very little nutritional content in exchange for you're still getting the calories. So you drink a soda, 200 calories, that's all sugar. You're not getting any type of nutritional value from that. Now those calories eventually add up, and if you consume more calories than you're burning, again, that's going to lead to weight gain in the end. With hydration, to measure it, of course, we always have our traditional thirst. Also, paying attention to the color of your urine. It should be clear to a light yellow tint. If you're getting into the dark yellow ranges, and even worse, dark brown, that signals an issue. You need to drink more water. All right, let's look at how we can use that nutritional understanding to help us make better food choices in the future. So what you're seeing here is the nutritional facts label. On the left side is a traditional one, and on the right side is what the FDA is proposing we go to. Now there's a few things that we want to pay attention to on this, starting from the top. We're looking at the serving size and the amount of servings in the container. So the numbers you see on the nutritional facts label isn't always going to be representative of the package itself. So what I mean by that is, for example, this 230 calories is not going to be what's in the entire package. You multiply that 230 by 8, and that's the amount in the total package. So moving down, we have our calories, and we can break up those calories by our macronutrient quantities. We have total fat. Moving down a few, we have total carbohydrates, and then finally protein. One thing we want to pay attention to under those total carbohydrates is the amount of sugar. Now again, sugar is a simple carbohydrate. It's going to be absorbed and processed by the body rapidly, which is going to spike those blood glucose levels and that subsequent insulin. Looking down further underneath that protein, we have our vitamin and mineral content. Now, with these, along with the macronutrients, if you move to the right side and you see that we have certain percentages, these are just the daily values, and that's based off a 2,000 calorie diet. So if you're eating more or less than that, these numbers are going to be slightly altered. One thing that we're not seeing on this is our ingredient label, and that ingredient label is going to tell you what's in that food, and it's going to go by the quantity. So the first ingredient is always going to be what's the most of what's contained in that food, and going down from there. Now there is one thing that we're not seeing on here, and you're not going to find it on any nutrition label. This is something you'll probably have to Google, and what it is it's called the Glycemic Index. Now what the Glycemic Index is it's a scale that measures how the body responds to carbohydrates, and that's based on a scale ranging from 0 to 100. So the closer it is to 0, the slower it's going to be broken down and absorbed by the body, whereas the higher it is, the more quickly it's going to be absorbed. So what we're looking for is to kind of avoid those things that are high on the glycemic index. We can compare this to our simple versus complex carbohydrates. Our complex ones take time to be broken down. It's going to give you a slow, sustained release, and these are going to be low on the glycemic index. Whereas things like sugar are going to be rapidly processed, and these are going to rate high on the glycemic index. Good kind of indicator is if you Google them and you see that the index is below 55, these are considered low glycemic index foods, and anything above that 55 is considered high. So some of the more popular diets you may have heard of, maybe you had a friend that tried it, or you saw something on social media about it, but you didn't quite fully understand what it was. First one we're going to talk about is going to be the Paleo Diet. So what the Paleo Diet entails is eating foods that cavemen traditionally would have during the Paleolithic era. And this is more of the hunter-gatherer mindset. So things like meats, vegetables, fruits, and nuts are staples within the Paleo Diet. There are things that are avoided, particularly anything that's grain-based, dairy products, processed meats. Think natural. If it's naturally occurring, then it's probably on the paleo, aside from things that are agricultural, like grains. So there are pros and cons to it as well. One of the pros being that it's a clean diet. You're eating natural foods. You're going to feel full longer on it because you're getting higher levels of protein and fat. So you're going to feel full longer than you would on something like a high carbohydrate diet. And there's also a weight loss factor to it. So when you're eating natural foods, it's kind of hard to overeat. And that means you're probably not going to be going into that excess level of calorie consumption. Cons to it, it can be expensive. If you read any of the paleo articles or the books, they oftentimes call for eating things like grass-fed beef and wild-caught or wild-farmed salmon, which is a lot more pricey than you would traditional means of these meats. And if you're a vegetarian on this, it may be hard to follow just because the majority of your protein is going to be coming from things like seeds and nuts. Finally, if you're an athlete, the carb level isn't going to be as high as what you may be used to, so your performance may suffer slightly from something like this, where you're getting more protein and fat as opposed to carbohydrates. The second popular diet we're going to talk about is going to be the keto or the ketogenic diet. So this diet was originally designed for the treatment of epilepsy. The idea behind it is you get your energy sources from fat as opposed to glucose. So with that, you're looking at excessively low amounts of carb consumption daily, oftentimes looking at less than 50 grams. So maybe that's equivalent to about 2 slices of bread here. Pros and cons to this one. Pros being you'll be on a reduced appetite, just like with the paleo diet. You have those high levels of protein and fat, which are going to help you feel full longer. You also have increased thermogenesis. What that is simply an increase in the amount of body heat produced, which means you're going to be burning a little bit more calories there. On the con side, it does take there is an adaptation period. This is about 1 to 2 weeks, and that's during the time that you're going to start to deplete those carbohydrate levels and your body transitions into using fat as opposed to carbs as an energy source. There's also the restriction on it. With the carbs, you're not going to be consuming a lot, and so there's a lot of foods that are going to be taken out of your diet if this is the type of diet that you're going to be doing. And finally, energy generation rate is going to decrease slightly. Now, as we said earlier, the body prefers carbohydrates as a source for energy. When it transitions into this using fat as the primary source, you're not going to be reproducing that energy as quickly as you would with that, meaning that performance may suffer slightly from it. So the third and final diet we're going to talk about is the zone diet. We talked earlier about the glycemic index, and the zone diet is based on that. So the idea behind this is to consume foods that are predominantly low glycemic index. It does work on a macronutrient ratio. So with the zone, you're looking at 40% carbohydrate consumption, 30% fat, and 30% protein. Now the pros and cons to this, one of the pros being that it's not as restrictive as other diets, meaning that you can eat grains and things, dairy, that you wouldn't on other types of diets like the paleo or the keto. It also regulates insulin levels because you're eating those low glycemic index foods. you're not going to have an excessive spike in that blood sugar, and you're also going to see that decrease in appetite due to increased fat and protein consumption. Now, on the downfall side, it does require some amount of prep. That prep's going to be mainly measuring, and what the Zone Diet uses what they call blocks, and those blocks are going to determine the amount of the quantity of food that you're eating with each meal and or snack. It can get expensive, and you need to make sure you're drinking enough water on this, just because you have that higher protein consumption. Alright, so we'll close out today's webinar with my recommendations on eating healthy. Now, with a lot of these fad diets going around, I know it's hard to stay on top of which ones work, which ones don't, what foods you can eat, what foods you can't eat. And so these are generalized recommendations that you'll see across a lot of different diets, again, based on just simply eating healthy. So my first recommendation is to avoid foods that are highly processed. The goal is to try and eat foods that are in their natural or as close to natural state. So if we think of something like orange juice versus an orange, the orange juice is going to be highly processed, whereas the orange is in its naturally occurring state. So eat as many of those naturally occurring foods as you can, cutting out those processed foods. If you do that, you'll already accomplish my second recommendation, which is to avoid excess sugar. Now, we all know sugar tastes good, but it does have that detrimental effect on the body. In fact, the effects of sugar on the body are quite similar to some types of drug use, where the drug is taken, there's a release of the hormone dopamine in the body, which is a feel-good chemical, and then the user wants more. And so in this case with sugar, you consume the sugar, you feel good after, you have that dopamine release, and then you crash. Now, over time, you eventually want more and more, so your body kind of gets accustomed to that sugar intake, so next time you need more to get that same amount of high off of it. Third recommendation is simply to drink plenty of water, and finally, make sure you're easing into these diets. So don't go from your traditional normal diet that you've been on to one that's extreme overnight. Kind of ease into it, give yourself time, give your body time to acclimate to it. Thanks. If you have suggestions for our next video, leave a comment below. And again, thanks for watching. See you next time.